Less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. My name is Jake Green. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we get to our guest for the day, head on over to lpgeorgia.com to learn more about the Libertarian Party of Georgia. If you don't live in Georgia, head to lp.org to learn about our national party and what we're doing to spread liberty in each state. And you can find your state affiliate from that website. But if you live in the state of Georgia, you can do a whole bunch of research on our website. You can take the world's smallest political quiz to tell you where exactly you are on this political spectrum. Believe it or not, it's not just left or right. There's a whole bunch of different positions. You can see some of our ads, our blog. You can look at our platform, headlines, affiliates, bylaws. What is a libertarian? You can get involved. There's events. You can register to vote through our website. You can do a blog submission if you have stuff you want to say. If you have things that are happening in your local community that you want to get out there on the internet and write an article about, you can absolutely do that. We have this new thing called Liberty Watch, where our very own Brian Allen is taking time to basically tell you what's happening in the legislature at any given moment. And so if you sign up for this email list, you will get very detailed, fantastic emails about what's happening. You'll be able to help with things like defend the guard, which is what's happening right now. We're trying to get some state reps to sponsor the bill for defend the guard, which basically means that Georgia would no longer send our National Guard troops overseas to fight. That would be strictly for the national military and not Georgia National Guard. So that's a big thing. It's happening tomorrow. There's a hearing downtown. I believe Shane Hazel will be speaking, and if I'm available, I'm going to be going to that as well. So head on over to our website, learn a lot. Reach out to us if you have any questions. We're always happy to talk. If you want to help in any way, please give us a shout. You can go to Twitter as well, @LP Georgia, and you can go to our new Instagram page, which is just Libertarian Party of Georgia. Super simple. All right. Well, last week I talked about how I want to focus on 3 things for 2024: Bitcoin, education, and healthcare. And this week is going to be all about Bitcoin. One of my friends, Brett Newton, who is not political in any real way. He's a filmmaker and an actor based here in Atlanta. And he got on the road to Bitcoin a few years ago. And I feel like I like displaying people's stories of people who aren't in politics and who aren't paying attention to things like the Fed and don't know what Austrian economics is, and just kind of showing how they got to the point where they think Bitcoin is the most secure thing to put your money into. So, without further ado, let's go talk to Mr. Brett Newton. All right, Mr. Brett Newton, welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast, brother.
Hey, thanks, man.
Yeah, man. How you doing today?
Good. Working like crazy. My mind is boggling and just multiple fires burning.
Well, thank you for coming on the show while your house burns down. That's very nice of you.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for being so concerned about my life.
I'm super concerned in the way that how it affects my life, but nothing else. Brett, tell folks what you do, and tell folks what you do.
So I work in the entertainment industry, from in front of the camera and behind the camera. I'm an actor in the Screen Actors Guild since 2010. I am a producer. I've had my own production company for the past 13 years. So I started acting in music in theater when I was a kid in New Jersey, but then I moved to LA and started professionally acting and working in TV and film in 2003. That's where I started my production company. That's where I became a SAG, part of the Screen Actors Guild. And then I moved here to Atlanta almost 6 years ago to basically, seeing that there was a super thriving industry in the entertainment industry here in Atlanta, to take advantage of that and to, really optimize my career. I work as a producer independently with my own company, Newton Entertainment Incorporated, which is DBA LA Reels. And then I work as a producer for a studio in Silicon Valley right now, doing feature film length social media series for an app called Real Short. And then I work as an actor pretty regularly in TV and film. And for hobbies, I collect Bitcoin. So
That's the only hobby anyone really needs, I think.
right, I think so.
Would folks recognize you from anything?
Maybe in a couple months, yes, because I have a couple really nice projects coming out.
Nice.
But I was on the TV show Naomi. I was on the TV show Glow, season 1, episode 7, as the asshole paramedic that said to one of the lead wrestlers, I said, if you're worried about your heart, why don't you give Weight Watchers a try? So I'm sure some people will remember that. Most recently, great. Most recently, I was on a Georgia Lottery commercial where I was Barry and I had my own jet in the driveway. So that's been airing. And then us actors, we're like, we're a man of many faces. So you may have seen me and not even known it was me, which is most likely.
Not to mention anybody in the film world has to do a whole bunch of different things just to stay afloat, which is why you have, companies like LA Reels.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, like, to press on that. Oh, hey, look at that promo. Yeah. So my company, LA Reels, basically it started as a short form narrative production company producing content for actors to create a portfolio of work, original content for actors to basically shoot original scenes. Like there's a catch-22 being an actor, right? Like you can't get work until you have a portfolio of demo reel content to show, but you can't get that unless you work, right? So we created back in the day, I had a business partner who I murdered. No, I'm just kidding. We're still good friends, and he sold his half of the company to me. But we started LA Reels, for actors that were in need of great footage to create opportunities for themselves. And we've created a ton of opportunities for actors and myself. But that has turned into shooting and producing over 4,000 scenes in the last 13 years, shooting and producing a feature film. And then also, the job that I do now, I'm literally, since August, I'm on my 8th feature film with this company since August right now. So I wrapped. Yeah.
For those who don't know how crazy that is, generally speaking, a feature film is about 120 pages, 90 to 120 pages, and you shoot between 3 and maybe 10 pages a day. And Brett is shot 8 feature films in
since August.
What is it? 6 months, 7 months?
Yeah, about that.
That's insane. That's like Tyler Perry level insanity.
Yeah, I agree. My brain is about to explode.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
well, let's start talking about Bitcoin. First off,
sure.
like very few people are like, I think it's 2% of the world is into Bitcoin at this moment. And so it is still very early in the life of Bitcoin. What was it that first made you even consider like doing research on Bitcoin?
Well, okay, let's start when I recognized that Bitcoin existed. And this was probably like 8 years ago. And I had no interest in Bitcoin. I didn't care about it. I didn't want to buy it. I was still living in Los Angeles, and I was working with a client who he is he's a black hat for for a banking system. What do you call that? He's a cybersecurity expert. So he brought me and my team from Los Angeles up to Las Vegas for Black Hat and DEF CON. And what we were doing there, we were interviewing cybersecurity experts about AI, which is another thing that I think people should definitely start learning about heavily right now too. But then also he was giving us insight about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And back then, I mean, that was 8 years ago. So that was 2015. So I think Bitcoin was like 300 or maybe $600. I don't know, but I should have bought it then.
What year did you say?
Well, 2000. So 8 years ago. So 2015. How much was Bitcoin in 2015?
In March of 2015, it was $300.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Right. So that's when I first really like got a good whiff of it and saw people actually starting to get it and have it. And I was like, oh, okay. But back then also like I had no money, like I was kind of like when did I get out of college? I was like I was like 7 years out of college and, still like fucking around in LA. Can I swear on this? So
Okay. Here, hang on. There we go.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Perfect. I'll let you know before I swear next time. But basically, he brought us up to Black Hat and DEF CON, and I mean, like, first of all, he put us up in the Paris Hotel on a corner suite that was 4,000 square foot. So like 4,000 square feet. Like that's how big the suite was, right? Like I'll never look at Vegas in the same way ever. So that's where he put us up, and that's where we did all the interviews. Yeah. We'd be outside the floor of like Black Hat, and we'd walk up to a bunch of people and we'd say, hey, we're doing this documentary, can we interview you? And then we'd pull a camera up, and then like we'd be at like 8 people, and they'd all scatter in different directions. So a bunch of cybersecurity nerds, black hats, hackers, like right. Literally at these places, you literally have the FBI there with your FBI jackets, and it's like FBI, they're like, we know you're here and we're here, don't fuck around. Like that's how serious that was. But we were interviewing all these cybersecurity experts that work for like the financial system and like big companies. And this guy used to walk around, with a sticker over his camera on his phone, because he basically told us, and this is good to know about security for your device. And I know I'm going a little offhand, but he basically told us anyone can hack into your device at any time if they have the means and the willpower, meaning, so if they have enough money and if they really want to. So really everyone's device is totally hackable. And this is coming from a cybersecurity expert that was working in the banking system. So anyway, he first introduced me to like, hey, people are like, Bitcoin's a thing, and like it's worth some monetary value. And I totally disregarded that. For years. And then before I left LA, I had a good friend who had started trading in crypto, and she was basically like, focus on Ethereum and Bitcoin, forget about all the other ones. I guess I understand this more now, but I guess Ethereum has some utility with smart contracts, et cetera, and Bitcoin is the only real commodity of cryptocurrencies. But anyway, I still didn't buy then. And then I think COVID happened. Then I packed up, moved to Atlanta for the opportunity of milk and honey in the entertainment industry. And then I think it wasn't until COVID, and I really was like, you know what, like, let me invest in some stuff. So I did some stock market stuff. I did Bitcoin. I did Ethereum. And it was funny because at that time I could afford a full Ethereum, but I couldn't afford an entire Bitcoin because it was still like 15 or 16,000 at that point, and I was like, oh, I'm not just going to spend 16,000 on that, blah, blah, blah. So I bought some of it. And then I guess there was a big spike, and I made good money on it. And then there was a big drop, but I was still up. Yeah. But then during COVID, I really started doing research into the fiat monetary system, the Federal Reserve, and basically our entire base of what money really is. I read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is basically about the entire creation of fiat currency, from like how iron makers, who used to make safes, were the first banks essentially where people would store their valuables in bars of gold. And then that became, basically pieces of receipts that people would write off to trade off to know that your value of gold was held in here, but you had a receipt. So people would trade those receipts as monetary stuff. That turned into fiat currencies and people creating fiat currencies.
We lost him. I think his phone probably died.
I'm here. I'm here. My phone rang.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
But if you look at like basically what that book did for me was it made me realize that, first of all the colonies that made up the United States, they all had their own fiat currencies, and the majority of those fiat currencies failed, and they failed repeatedly.
Mhm.
They weren't based on any monetary value whatsoever. And then if you look at the history of the Federal Reserve, there were actually the Federal Reserve that we have now, which was, I think it was created in 1917, somewhere around there, 1913, 1913. Okay, there were two Federal Reserves before that.
Yeah.
And they were there to do the same exact thing. The Federal Reserve was strategically named the Federal Reserve. It is neither federal nor it is a reserve. It's a privately held company, and it doesn't hold any money. It just prints money out of thin air. It used to print paper money, but now everything's just digital. Our entire accounting system in fiat US dollars is all just digital anyway. And they're trying to burn as much paper money as possible because they want to know every single trade that happens. But basically, like, realizing, doing research into the Federal Reserve and fiat currency and learning where fiat currency came from in the history of it, and then also what our fiat dollar actually is, and then having a better understanding of what inflation really is, and then also quantitative easing and quantitative tightening, where the Federal Reserve prints money or they take money out of circulation. And learning that in the last, and this is a relative estimate, but in the last 4 years, we basically had 1/3 of all U.S. fiat currency printed in existence in the last 4 years. That means, 1/3 of your purchasing power is now gone. So if you were saving $100,000, that means in 4 years you lost, $33,000 of purchasing power in the last 4 years because our Federal Reserve is just printing money like crazy. And I mean, and then if you start really looking at our economics and like Wall Street, and then just the way that money is created, like every time a bank loans money, there's, that money is recreated. And then that money can be loaned, and it's insane. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And there's no real store of value. That's why, you look at a house that was $100,000 5 years ago is now a $300,000 house. That house didn't become more valuable. No, it's the purchasing power became worth less.
Yeah.
So
exactly it, man. That's exactly it. How would you advise people start with The Creature from Jekyll Island as far as reading goes, or is that because I love that book, but that book is dense.
That book is dense. I think the best way, if people want to really like dive into that, get the audiobook of Creature from Jekyll Island,
audiobook,
and just go on long road trips. Yeah.
Just go drive around for a little while, listen to that. You won't want to put it down. Like I've listened to it a few times now.
I think what's good, like when I go through long books like that, is like if I listen to the audiobook and I have the book in front of me, I can highlight notes as I listen to it.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to do it too. Yeah, because then you can just compile things. I know there's a new app now where I think it's for podcasts, but I think they have one for audiobooks as well, where you can have it digitally take notes for you as it, like you can hit a button and it'll take a note on what just was said. So that's an interesting way to do it as well. What has been your biggest hurdle to actually purchasing your first, like your first purchase of Bitcoin? What was your biggest?
So I think I was just very skeptical.
Mm.
I think I was just very skeptical of like linking my bank account to an exchange. To first it was that. Then finally, like I linked my bank account to an exchange. I did Coinbase, because that was the one that everyone like knew or whatever.
It's super easy.
Yeah, and it's once I figured out how to do it, it was super easy.
Yeah.
And then once I got into, oh hey, like, oh, this works like this. I think I had crypto on Coinbase for a few years,
Mhm.
until I really learned what a cold wallet was and what cold storage was. And then, I mean, you helped me out a lot with that, to be honest. Like, we talked a
Mhm.
lot about this, like meeting people like yourself, and talking through it and having more understanding. And basically, from what I've learned, to like basically correlating that with other people's thoughts and what they know, and things just kind of like syncing up and being like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Really helped kind of solidify it and help me do even more research into it. Um, you know, Obviously Michael Saylor is a huge person in the space to look at
Mhm.
and like kind of look at what he's doing. And Adam Hudson is a huge business entrepreneur acquaintance of mine. He's an Australian guy who like has had multi-million-dollar businesses, and he's totally pro Bitcoin. I started listening to like him saying stuff on social media, and I was like, dude, if he's doing it, let me even get more into it. You
Mhm.
know, yeah. What do you got there? Oh, Michael Saylor. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of stuff Michael Saylor has to say is like really good, and people need to listen. But I think because he is so big in the space, I think people almost see him as a false prophet, so to speak. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah, because
so
he owns so much Bitcoin that if the price of Bitcoin goes up, he profits from it. And so
yeah, well,
like him
sure.
encouraging other people to buy Bitcoin can be very suspicious. But like it's it, that's why I think a lot of it's reliant on people like you and me who, yes, will benefit from the price of Bitcoin going up, but we're not going to become like billionaires because of it. Like it'll go up a little bit, we'll make
Right.
a little money, but what we really want is other people to become financially free and independent from all this inflation garbage that's happening with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah,
Um,
I see it as a long-term hold for
yeah.
me. I see 10, 20 years, and then I'll figure out what I want to do next with it. But I mean, mostly I'm looking at it as like a savings account for my daughter, or like,
Mhm.
or maybe in 10 years, like we'll have enough to take out of that or loan against it, where we can have, put a mortgage in on something larger to live in. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I see it as a long-term thing. So
How so day to day people tend to think, I mean, day to day Bitcoin's pretty volatile. The price goes up and
yeah.
down constantly. How is your mindset on the day to day when it comes to Bitcoin?
My mindset is this. My mindset is understanding Bitcoin as a store of value against fiat currency and the printing of money,
Mhm.
and knowing that there will only ever be knowing how Bitcoin is made, and knowing how it's deflationary in that once 21 million Bitcoins are ever existing, there will never be more Bitcoin. And knowing that every 4 years that the amount of Bitcoin made is split until you hit that 21 million mark, so there's less and less. So it's a deflationary currency.
Mhm.
So just by that, and also looking at the 15-year track record, right? Seeing the track record of Bitcoin over 15 years, seeing that I think technically it's the best performing asset over a 15-year period in existence, right? And it's outperforming the S&P 500. And most people are not talking about it, but also now you see there's 12 ETFs that have just been approved in the United States.
Mhm.
The SEC has just approved those, and they're running through an exchange like Coinbase. So now you have the big boys playing in the space. You have, BlackRock and Fidelity and all these companies now buying Bitcoin. So, and they're putting, even if they put 5% of their portfolios into it, that's a massive amount of liquidity and money.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, like, some of them are aiming to do 1%, you know, which is insane. I think there's more and more people learning about Bitcoin and hearing about Bitcoin, and I think that's all it takes. And then, you know, you get people like you and I who are already invested in it. Like, I think there's not a week that goes by that I don't talk to someone about Bitcoin. And it's not because I'm trying to force a message, but it's because like I tell people this. I'm like, hey, like, if you're willing to lose $1,000, just take $1,000 and just buy some Bitcoin. Just take $1,000, and in 10 years you'll make money. I promise. You know, I mean, and like, I say that very confidently.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at it as a week to week thing. Now, sometimes, like, when Bitcoin's bullish or bearish, you know, when it's bullish, of course I want to like look at it and see and get excited about it. But like, if I lost half of the amount, if I lost 50% of, you know, what I have in Bitcoin right now, I wouldn't be worried about it, because I'm not taking it out in the short term.
Right.
I'm looking at it in the long term. I think, you know, I think Bitcoin has a definitive pattern with every halving. If you look at the 15-year cycle and every halving, you'll see
Mhm.
relatively similar patterns. Whereas, you know, like, you'll see the price of Bitcoin, you know, skyrocket and then come down, but it never goes down below a certain point, and then it skyrockets and then comes down. You know, and the reality is now, with, you know, with these huge financial investors coming into the market, you know, that stuff may change a little bit, but I don't, like, in terms of the pattern of how Bitcoin moves.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously they're, you know, they have such inflows of money. But I think the more and more and more money that comes in to the, you know, to Bitcoin, into the network itself, I think the less volatile it will be in the long run.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's kind of how it's set up, and that's kind of how economics works. Austrian economics works in general. It will automatically get less volatile over time. The more people adopt it, and the more it's treated like a currency, which I think is one of the biggest misconceptions with Bitcoin. Is people think of it more as an investment than a currency. I think that the the ways that people are going to be able to actually spend it in the very near future are going to shock people. Like, you're going to be able to buy anything you want with Bitcoin rather than having to transfer it into your bank account and then go buy stuff with your credit card, debit card, check, whatever. And so I think the more people understand that in the future, when the dollar continues to be inflated and go down in value, you're going to be able to buy the same. If you put $1,000 into Bitcoin, you're going to be able to buy more than $1,000 worth of stuff in the future with that Bitcoin, because the dollar will go down and Bitcoin will continue to go up. And one of my biggest things that I try to convey to people is that it is a currency. You can buy things with it right now. You can buy groceries with it. We bought architectural plans for a house up in Montana. Like, you can buy things with it. It's not this thing that you just invest like a stock market and you get a return later on, but you can actually spend it, which is pretty cool. It's meant to be a currency.
How much was the pizza that was bought with how many Bitcoin?
I think it was 10,000 Bitcoin.
10,000 Bitcoin for one
First
pizza?
transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't the first transaction. The first transaction was back when Bitcoin was like 3 cents or something. But it was yes, like the first pizza ever purchased with Bitcoin.
So 10,000 Bitcoin right now would be $500 million.
$500 million. Yeah.
So
the most expensive pizza ever.
And yeah, that's another thing. Like, people are very precious about the Bitcoin because they know it's going to go up. Those who hold it really, really hold it and don't like to spend it. But
yeah,
I much prefer to find other people who enjoy and who see Bitcoin for what it is and are willing to trade goods and services for a certain amount of Bitcoin. Now, I tend to think that trading your Bitcoin based on what the dollar value is at this moment is idiotic, because if you're in Bitcoin, you know it's going to go up in value. So like trading based on the dollar is dumb. So I try to negotiate to the point where we're just talking in Satoshis, and we're just talking in fractions of a Bitcoin rather than talking in dollars. So you said you're going to hold it for decades or a decade?
I think 10 years is the hold right now, and like and still purchasing little bits, as much as I can. Obviously, I got stuff I got to take care of, with fiat currency. But I think I'm going to continue just purchasing little bits and pieces here, because, I think it'll continue to go up. And I think, I think I'm looking at a 10-year plan right now, and then potentially even 20 years. But I want to see what it does. I think it will be significant in. I think it will be significant in 5 years. I think it'll be very significant in 10, and even more so in 20. So like, I mean, here's the other thing that kind of sold me too. Like, the internet, right? The internet, like, what became a real thing in 1982 or 84, sometime within the early 80s, right? And then it wasn't really adopted until like early, like real adoption in the US or in the world until like late 90s, early 2000s, right? And so like that's a 15-year bell curve for then it to then like the multiplier effect, and now it's everywhere in the world, right? And then basically, I think we are at that point with Bitcoin. I think it's 1-2% worldwide adoption right now, and that 2% came very quickly because it was at 1%. It was struggling to get to 1% for like the past 14-15 years, and now we're at 2% very quickly. So I think that worldwide adoption is going to happen even faster. And when that happens, and when massive users happen, and then more people educate themselves on it, more people educate that it is a decentralized currency and what it can actually do for the world. That's when I think it's gonna just skyrocket even more. And
for sure.
Yeah.
And like with all the worldwide events right now, with the wars going on, with BRICS forming, people with other countries going off of the dollar, you're just going to continue to see the purchasing power of your fiat currency based on the United States dollar go down, which is actually another misnomer of Bitcoin. Like it isn't just that Bitcoin is going up. Like part of Bitcoin going up is the fact that the dollar is going down. Like I brought this up in my movie, where Divide and Dominate, where like if you look at gold based on the dollar, you see a gold chart like this. But if you look at the dollar based on gold, you just see gold, because it's just flat.
Right.
It just stays the same value the entire time. And so I think we're lied to and tricked into believing that Bitcoin is far more volatile than it actually is, where it's actually the dollar that's the volatile one, that continues to go down in a very volatile way. So, go for it.
Oh, well, what's crazy about gold is I think with this having a Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin will actually be less inflationary than gold, because right now, so gold it's inflationary in the fact that there's gold that is mined. There's a certain amount of gold that is mined and taken from the earth every year, right? And like there's only a certain amount of labor force that can do that, and machines that can do that. So there's a rate at which gold inflates, with additional gold being pumped into existence. With Bitcoin, the way, obviously, I mean, this, with the way that mining happens and blocks happen, every time a miner creates a block and certifies it, they're rewarded with Bitcoin. Now, with the halving happening, I'm pretty sure that it will be, happening in March, April. It will now become less inflationary than gold, which is crazy.
It's crazy, and it's pretty cool, and it's going to help drive up the value of Bitcoin in the near future. I don't know what that what that price will be, but it will definitely be going up in April once that happens. What would be, so I know you said you at least mentioned Bitcoin to like at least one person a week. What would be if you were actually pitching to somebody and their life depended on adopting Bitcoin, what would you say?
Your life depends on adopting Bitcoin, so do it. I need to work on my elevator pitch. My under 30-second pitch. There's so much to learn and know about Bitcoin. I think the first thing is hey, you need to understand what fiat currency is. You need to understand what the Federal Reserve is. Yeah. And you need to understand what the protocol of Bitcoin is and how it's decentralized and why. And start there, and then I think you will have a good understanding.
Yeah, and there's a book that talks about that called the Fiat Standard, which there's also a book called the Bitcoin Standard. These are very good resources to start with, in my opinion. Highly recommend starting with the Fiat Standard and then going over to the Bitcoin Standard. I think it's down here.
Who's the author? What's his name? The author of this?
I can never pronounce it, man. Pronounce
the Fiat Standard, and it's the same. Yeah, Seferdine almost. He just did a podcast with Lex Fridman. So,
I love Lex Fridman. Yeah.
So and it's, like, it's a good place. Like, if you don't want to read the book yet, like, listen to the podcast, listen to him on there. And that'll start you.
And there are other companies, like Shane Hazel, friend of the show. He works for Swan Bitcoin, who is all about Bitcoin, no other crypto. It's only Bitcoin all the time. They want to lead you down the path to financial freedom, basically through Bitcoin. And they're all about privacy. They fight the government on KYC, which is know your customer laws, which the government forces on things like exchanges and marketplaces and things like that, where basically you have to give up your, social security number or bank accounts or all this kind of, just give them a ton of information so they can keep track of all the crypto that you're buying and selling and everything. So they know exactly how much to tax you. And so Swan is a great resource for that, because they're actively fighting against those laws, which is fantastic. Yeah, Brett, man, I really appreciate you coming on, dude. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say to the folks before we get out of here?
I don't know. I mean, I think we said a lot, and I appreciate it. I do talk a lot. My wife tells me that. And you tell me that too. So, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for having me. If you need any content produced, check out lareels.com.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. If you want advice on being an actor in the entertainment industry, you can find my contact info there. And I know, I work in the very same industry that is the downfall of our lives and planets. I know it's an oxymoron, but it gives me a much better understanding into it. And the next podcast we do, we'll talk about the manipulation of media. We'll go from there.
Oh, sweet. That sounds great. All right, brother. We'll stick around after the credits and we'll chat for a minute. But everybody out there, if you're interested in joining Libertarian Party of Georgia, go to lpgeorgia.com if you want to learn more about our organization. And if you want to learn more about Bitcoin, reach out to me, reach out to Swan Bitcoin, reach out to Shane Hazel. Don't reach out to Brett. He didn't know anything. Clearly,
I'm still learning stuff.
Yeah. Actually, that is the one biggest thing. I think people are intimidated by how much there is to learn about Bitcoin, because nobody has time to do anything. And so learning about Bitcoin is a super difficult thing to do. So if you want to make it easier, reach out to somebody who knows Bitcoin. Yeah.
I think hope.com is a good also. And yeah, hope.com is a great place to just watch some videos.
Hope.com. I've literally never heard of hope.com. So there we go. Go to hope.com, learn more about Bitcoin. All right, y'all. Tune in to Liberty Libations every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Free Georgia podcast every Monday night at 8 p.m. We'll see you next week. Peace.